everybody knew he was probably was the biggest name on that day. And to win that, I felt like that's when everything changed. That was the moment that everybody kind of looked me different. Or maybe I can try the butterfly guard, and I put one hook from there with the butterfly guard. But then I felt like my opponent still can move forward, and then I put the other hook, getting the X, you know what I mean? And then I felt like my opponent now he cannot kick, and now he cannot step forward. It would be fun if I can tell you that I don't know the rules in the ADCC, you know what I mean? If you ask me for all the points scored in the ADCC, I don't know.
For you to, look across the mat at that guy who's so much bigger and believe in yourself to be able to go out there and compete. What's that mentality like?
I believe I have to give a credit to.
Do you train combat sports? How's your body holding up? Combat sports are the most physically demanding sports in the world. The weight cutting, the training schedules, there's no off season. Staying on top of your nutrition isn't optional, it's a necessity. Perfect Sports has a host of products that will help you a ton. They have products that promote muscle growth, give you energy, and boost your immune system, among many other benefits. Take your nutrition into your own hands so you can bring your best, most recovered self to train every day. Use code FIGHTERS15 for 15% off your Perfect Sports order. I'm joined today by the legend, Marcelo Garcia, widely considered one of the greatest of all time, 5-time world champion, 4-time ADCC champion, 3rd inductee into the ADCC Hall of Fame, and a true pioneer whose innovations reshaped modern jiu-jitsu. Marcelo, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, I really appreciate your time too.
Thank you so much. So, you've got a match coming up that I'm super, super excited about. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about your return to competition earlier this year against Imanari. How did it feel for you to get back to a training camp and get back to the big stage at one championship?
It was huge, man, because it's something that I was missing, you know, something that was such a big part of my life. I felt like be able to compete jiu-jitsu was such a big conquer for me as a kid. Kind of growing up, to be able to kind of like face all my fears through jiu-jitsu. And then through the last 14 years, I wasn't competing anymore. And obviously I was dealing with my own challenge. You know what I mean? I was facing all my other competition at home that I felt like I need to overcome, you know what I mean? But then whenever I saw the chance that I was able to come back and compete, I felt like I'm not getting any younger. If I don't do this now, I don't want to be like 80 years old, try to come back to competition. Even I hope I can compete until that age, you know what I mean? But who knows, right? So we don't know what could happen. So I wanna don't waste the opportunity or the chance that I have, you know. Since I still wanna do it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. And as you mentioned, you've had to overcome a lot. I mean, in your break from competition, you've lived a lot of life. You had kids, you focused on coaching, and you beat stomach cancer, which is super incredible. So my question to you about that is, do you think that the life you've lived since competing last, do you think that changes your perspective on competition now?
I hope not. I hope not, you know, because I always felt like I have a strong mind in my opponents. I always felt like uh, I use a little bit of my personality to be a little bit stubborn, you know what I mean, to have like a strong mind. And that has worked for me. And on the other way, being this time off, I was afraid that I would hurt that. I
Mm.
was afraid that maybe we're gonna be taking a step back. And that was a big concern of mine. But then since I just came back to go compete obviously like a year ago, but for me it still feels like yesterday. And I have that feeling that okay, I'm glad nothing has changed. So I feel like I still want to get better from here, but I was afraid to maybe I have felt like a step back, but I didn't feel that. So that was a good I achieved for me, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's really incredible to hear. And so you've got this match coming up against Lachlan. What did you think about this match when it was offered to you?
Look, it wasn't easy to get like a good opponent, right? Because I want to feel the challenge, and I feel like there's no need to me go compete against really young guys right now. Even I feel like I'm still prepared for one day if I need to. And there was a lot of names coming up, and um, his name came on my mind, and I'm the one that asked for him, you know. And Tom the Blast, who I was talking to, he's like, okay, I think that's a good match. And then I was just waiting for him to contact Lachlan Giles and today work that out. And I'm glad they worked that out because I felt that is a match that I want to. I felt that was a match that make me feel challenged, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm looking for now.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's one that's greatly anticipated by the fans as well. I mean, when I interviewed Lachlan in September, and when I was doing a bunch of research preparing for his interview, every time you look up his name, on Reddit, everyone's like, I would love to see him return, and I want to see him return to competition against Marcelo. So, people have been talking about it for a really long time, so I think it's greatly anticipated as well. So, I want to ask you about that match. What can we expect to see from you when you face Lachlan in competition?
But Maddie, just before, that's what kind of surprised me. I was not expecting that. I didn't know people want to see me against him. Do you understand? That kind of
Mm.
caught me by surprise. When I saw the exciting of the people around me, that really make me feel like, oh, I didn't realize you guys who enjoy to see this match. Because first I thought I want to do the match. I felt like, okay, I want to take my chance. I mean, against him. I saw him competing in the ADCC. I was there, coach my students, and I felt like, I felt that feeling like, I want to try that. I want to go against him. I want to see what's gonna happen. I want to prove my jiu-jitsu once again. I felt that need, you know what I mean? And that's when and that's when his name came out. It was not because I saw anywhere that people want to see me against him. That came out from me, and I didn't even have that much expectation if that match could happen. But I felt like, oh, that would be a good match. I felt, you know what I mean? And now going to compete against him, it's 10 minutes, you know, I mean, I hope that time will be enough for us to put a good show. I hope that time will be enough for a lot of things happens because my most concern is I do never want to have like a bored match. I want to have like an exciting match. Um, I I have the type of juice that I want to look for the submission. Doesn't matter what cost. I don't mind to be dying the end of the match, but I will give everything I have. I will hate to go home feeling like I could give more. I have that feeling before once, and that was enough for me. That taught me a lot. I went home, I was like, oh, why I didn't risk more? And I end up losing the match. So I have a strong feeling like to never let this happen again. So I hope those 10 minutes will be enough for us, to put a good match.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Marcelo, I don't think you've ever had a boring match as far as we've seen, on the big stage. So, and it's really interesting to hear that this was, anticipated for you for a long time. You saw him compete at ADCC and we're thinking, okay, that's a match that I would want in the future. So I'm really glad that we're going to finally see how it plays out. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
I
So,
don't even remember the year, you know what I mean? I don't even remember the year. I just remember that I was there. I remember exactly where I was in the gymnasium, and then I watched. I was I just felt that feeling that feeling to oh, that would be a good challenge, because I don't know if you ever heard that from me say that before, me and another conversation, a talk or interview, but I got 2 points on my life of competing that I felt I wanted more challenge, I wasn't feeling that, I was feel oh, it's the same match again, you know what I mean? I feel it's the same guys again, the same opponents in the same final again. I felt like I wanted somebody different. I wanted somebody that different that I know is going to be a good challenge. I don't want somebody that I think I can beat this guy, I think I'm gonna beat this guy. I don't want somebody like that. I want somebody that I don't know what's gonna happen, and that's what makes it exciting for me. And it's good and bad, but in the last ADCC that I felt okay, everybody already expect me to win, so it's a different feeling. It's not challenge when even I know I cannot promise that I'm gonna win, but when people keep telling you oh, you're already gonna win, it's just not good. It's just
hmm
you feel oh, so you don't care. You almost you're not even excited. You already know that's what's gonna happen. Makes you feel there's not much to prove. And also at the same time, I was like, oh, but I understand that, but I want a bigger challenge, you know. And growing up in jiu-jitsu, I never felt that was the case. I always felt like I need to prove more. And then got to the point that like people are expecting to know what's gonna happen. I was like, it's kind of like a little bit of like a bummer, you know what I mean? And then when I saw Lachlan there, I was like, and people were so excited about his win. I was like, I think people's gonna feel like it's gonna be a good challenge for me. And now kind of surprised me to see that people still thinking about that. So, works out.
Totally. I mean, what you're talking about, I think that the mentality of, people expecting you to win and telling you that all the time, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit of why a lot of people do compete in the first place. It's to push yourself, bring yourself out of your comfort zone, feel the pressure and the anxiety. But there's not so much pressure when everyone has that kind of expectation that they're putting on you. And,
It's
like
good
you're
and
saying,
bad. You understand? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. So, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about your kind of early days of jiu-jitsu. You've mentioned that it was initially old school martial arts movies that got you interested in martial arts. So how old were you when you started actually training jiu-jitsu?
12. And I started with my judo teacher. He was brown belt in jiu-jitsu. So, training with like a judo black belt who has like a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Many times he was teaching judo already. Every time actually, he was teaching judo. He was always like mention jiu-jitsu. So I always learned jiu-jitsu through judo without realize. Everything was about like, okay, you want to do this in judo, but then in jiu-jitsu you can do that. So I was 12 and I consider judo time was my jiu-jitsu start too, because everything was kind of like mixed up. Even I didn't compete my first year of jiu-jitsu. I was only doing judo. Uh, but then the second year I was already like a fully trained judo and jiu-jitsu. So it was like a 12 to 13.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much crossover between the two martial arts and jiu-jitsu coming from judo as well. I'm sure that they complemented each other quite well. And so, do you have any kind of like favorite memories or favorite moments from those early days of your introduction to martial arts?
Um, Probably the first time that I win in judo, was a big deal. And like I said, like I just started judo. And I felt like I was doing well in judo. That kind of surprised me because I was coming from karate and I was not doing good in karate. And then as soon as I started judo, like I felt like, oh, I think I understand what's going on. I think I like this. And that helps me. But there was a moment that like in my first competition that I didn't know what to expect. I was gonna try my best. I already thought like, okay, there's a big chance I'm gonna lose because it's my first tournament, and obviously that got me nervous. And as soon that my opponent started to grabbing my gi, what's something that I was not used to in karate competition, right? I start have that feeling like of numbs on my whole body. I knew he was pull me and he was push me, you know what I mean, like a judo grip, but then I was not feeling anything because I was so nervous. And then I have a click. I was like, I have to do something. I have to start like a reactive. I think that was part of my personality. Like, I'm not gonna lose without try. So I started like doing something. Then I guess like I was in a better time than my opponent. I was able to take him down, and I think I won one or two matches, and that gave me like the win of that first tournament. And that feeling was already like a lot better than karate that I was not doing good. And that kind of like a sparkling something in me that I felt like, oh, I think I like this. This is gonna be really good. But then right when I finished the match, I have that feeling like feeling great to win my first tournament ever in anything. I never have won a tournament in karate. And I felt like, wait a minute, but I probably gonna have to do this again. And I don't know if I can do that. And then their whole nervous came back. I was like, oh, that feels great to win, but like I can't believe I have to do this again. And then obviously like the whole nervous like start all over again. And then all the tournaments came, and then I was forced to manage that, the anxiety that everybody feel when you're gonna do something like a big for yourself.
Yeah, how did you learn how to conquer that nervousness and conquer that anxiety so that you could actually go out there and perform to the best of your abilities?
I think I learned a lot from my mistakes, and it's hard to accept, but obviously like we need to accept when we doing something wrong and try to fix. And one time I did a match, was supposed to be like a good challenge match. It was a good opponent that we have compete many times before. And that day I couldn't do anything to him. And I was doing a lot, but I was not doing anything. I felt like I was moving so much in the match and I couldn't do anything. And then got to one point, obviously I got ahead because I was trying so hard, but I was like so out of control during the match. And I left the match winning, but then I felt like I didn't like that feeling, like I lost total control during the match against someone that like I know I can beat him, but then was not comfortable. And then I was like, I have to do something. I didn't know what to do, but I have to control myself. I was literally spinning around my opponent. I was literally like going to De La Riva, to his back, to the front of him again, then going again. And I did like maybe like an easy five spin. And I just don't like that feeling. I don't know how to fix that. All I know that like, okay, next time I need to slow down something. And I think I did. The next match against somebody else was a bit better. But then I was one time in the back of a gymnasium waiting to they call me out, and I start to feel very nervous. I never felt that, and I was already black belt, and I start feel that nervous. I was like, and my heart it starts like a beating so hard, so fast, and I was like, why this happen? I'm black belt. I competed so many times. I was like, why this happen? And I took the time before and I was like, okay, let me just try to breathe. Let me just try to breathe. When I say to breathe, like let me concentrate on my breathing. And I literally started like inhale and exhale. And then I was like, and then literally my heart just kind of like got to normal pace. And then I started to feel like, I can't believe I just need to breathe. And then got me back to like just like I was still nervous, but just like a normal stage nervous. And from that day on, I was like, I just need to stop. You know, every time I feel like any nerves, I just like stop. And when I say stop, like I literally like whatever make me nervous, I just stop. If I start thinking about something that make me nervous, I just like I stop. And then obviously like I change towards something else. I start doing something else. And I feel that was the moment that I felt like I got hold of my anxious. Even I'm still feel that, but I feel like I can manage that and never let that get out of control again.
Yeah, like breathing exercises and controlling your heart rate, I think is such an important element for controlling your anxiety. And it's something that we're seeing more, it talked about a little bit more, and we're seeing it a bit more on, the biggest stage of competition. Like for example, at CJI this past summer, Nicky Rod got a submission and then immediately sat down on the mat and was meditating, controlling his heart rate because he had to go again. And, he's talked about that on podcasts after and how he wears a heart rate monitor and he was able to bring his heart rate back to, a normal level so that he can perform well for the next match. And I think that that's such an important skill to be able to develop because especially when you're that nervous competing, for me, sometimes I just can't think, like it can really, really affect your performance. So it's really interesting to hear how you develop that on your own. And another kind of mindset question that I think a lot of people ask when they see you compete is regarding your absolute matches. You're across the mat from someone who has maybe, 70 pounds bigger than you, 100 pounds bigger than you. How does that mentality look like for you to, look across the mat at that guy who's so much bigger and believe in yourself to be able to go out there and compete? What's that mentality like?
Uh, Man, I believe it's a life skills, right? If you can learn how to breathe through a challenge, I feel like it's a life skill that everybody should just like conquer that, to be able to breathe through
Mhm.
through like a difficult. I believe I have to give a credit to all my coaches. Since my first coach, like he never protect me on the match. He never like or just go against this guy, or just go against that guy, or don't go with that guy. He always like push me through like the biggest challenge, like a big guy, like a mean look guy, there was never an option in training. And then um in one of my first tournament, my coach was not there to see me compete against somebody bigger. I was a yellow belt, compete against adults.
Mm.
Um, and so there was never other option, right? I didn't have an option to say oh, I think he's too big. So my coach never give that options to me. He never asked me and then another time, the first absolute that I won, my coach told me Paulão told me look, it's a big tournament. There's a lot of big guys. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see if you should compete the absolute or not. Because I was still juvenile and I was gonna compete like a blue belt absolute. I was like, okay, that's good. I'm glad you think about me. I'm glad you're taking care of me. That was the feeling that I have. And Maddie, was a lot of us, was a lot of his students competing that day. And then I was doing my division as a juvenile, like a teenager. And then I was gonna do the absolute as adult, a blue belt. And a lot of big guys. That was the biggest bracket in that tournament. That was only blue belts. That was like one or two purple belts match. It was a big deal, those purple belt match. But most of the other people was just blue belt. And I got to one point that I finished my division. I was still like around there, and then they start calling to the absolute. I was like, oh, blue belt, adult, absolute, Marcelo Garcia. And then I started looking around. I was like, I just finished. Where's my coach? I need to ask him. I need to ask him if he's okay. And they're like, you, Marcelo? And they start looking, pointing at me. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, this way. And then I was like, where's my coach? You know what I mean? I need to ask him if he's okay. And then obviously another guy on the other side got to the same like a mat area of me. So I didn't have many options. And then I end up winning that tournament. And that tournament was blue belt, adult, absolute, no time limit. And that was the biggest bracket on that tournament. And that was the last match. I ended up going a really big guy. When I say big guy, like really big guy, that was the biggest guy I could imagine. And we went 45 minutes. And I ended up winning because he just quit. It was just too long for him. He just quit. Got to one point, he just quit after I took his back. I mean, no point, just submission. And that feeling makes me feel like, okay, I don't have no option. So since that, because I did so well on that. Absolutely. I didn't have no option. Now I cannot run anymore. Now I cannot ask my coach like, oh, should I do this? My coach, they just got used to like, okay, you're okay to go in the absolute. So since that, I just never give an option for myself, like, oh, option like, oh, I don't want to go in the absolute today. And my coach, they kind of like got used to like, okay, Marcelo, I always do the absolute. So I always felt like it was part of the responsibility, go and compete. Just no option, no other option.
Wow, that's quite the story. I feel like everyone who does jiu-jitsu and competes has been in that moment where it's like you're getting called and it's like, where's my coach? I need to find my coach. It's like a frantic thing, but that's such a crazy story in a 45-minute match. I can't even imagine. That's really incredible.
Maddie,
Yeah.
that literally lights up that fire to go compete. Absolutely, you know what I mean? I can't deny that because it was a big deal for me. When I say for me,
Hmm.
I was just a teenager coming up from a kid who was not really confident, and then to win that tournament as a teenager, where when you're a teenager, you still feel like a very like you don't know what you want to do in life, what's gonna happen to you. I still have all that weakness as a kid who was kind of like a feel everyone felt bullying, I mean, the age, I mean, like in school. And to win that tournament, like, oh, that was huge for me. And I can talk a lot about the match. And one time, I don't know if you guys could imagine. Like I took a shot on that big guy. He sprawled on top of me. You guys imagine that. And then he grabbed my ankles while he sprawl, why I sprawl on the, why I was underneath him. And he stand up and picked my feet up out of the floor. I was literally with my hands on the floor and my feet out of the floor. That's how big he was. And to still win that tournament was a big deal and was the biggest event on that day. You know what I mean? So that's why I felt like that was a good feeling. That was hard, but I want to do it again. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, that's such a crazy story, but you proved it to yourself that you could do that, you could conquer that kind of challenge. And something you mentioned there about kind of, being a teenager and doing these crazy competitions, and having, results that are proving to you that you have what it takes. Um, you were coming up at a time when there wasn't really a set path, a career path for Jiu-Jitsu or even MMA. So was it moments like that that made you decide that you could, dive in and forge your own path? Or what kind of made you realize that you could pursue and, make a path for yourself in jiu-jitsu in a career?
Maddie, like that's why today when I feel like I like to go compete, and then when I see the events, how big are today, how much money people is getting today, and how nice look to go compete, I was like, I want to have that too because I did without that. I was like, I enjoy go compete. You know, I was like, why I cannot compete now and have all this good stuff that we don't have before? I feel like, that's something that like anyone that enjoys jiu-jitsu, like who enjoys jiu-jitsu back then, I was like, I still want to do that now, so why not, right? But like I said, Manny, like I didn't have many uh bright future. I didn't think I had a bright future. But so when I started jiu-jitsu, I just felt like, oh, this really makes me happy. When I say makes me happy, like as a teenager, you don't know what makes you happy sometimes. You're like, whatever, you know what I mean? I don't care. You know what I mean? You hear that so much about like, I don't care, you know what I mean? And that moment I felt like I care. I really care like how that makes me feel. And doesn't matter what will happen, I felt like I want to do that forever. When I say forever, like I was imagining what it was forever, and I was like, I feel like I can do that forever. But at the same time, we always felt like in jiu-jitsu, in that time, you have to do MMA. So growing up, I always felt like I want to do MMA because I have to. That's what I felt I have to. Especially because the opportunities, like I felt like you're not gonna have that many opportunities just in jiu-jitsu, so you're gonna have to do MMA, you know. So that was kind of like the path that I thought like I was gonna follow, you know.
Yeah, did you ever think when you were a kid and when you were growing up in jiu-jitsu, did you ever think that jiu-jitsu would grow to where it's at right now? Where people are like $1 million is the cash prize. What an insane trajectory that jiu-jitsu has been
That was
on.
enough already. That was enough, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? For us in that time, it felt we don't need more than that, you know what I mean? I was happy to be able to just like make a live by just teaching jiu-jitsu. When I say make a live, just like not make a live to be able to buy a car or buy a house. I was happy to be able to make a live and don't starving. You know what I mean? I was very happy. I was like, how can I do something that I enjoy so much and it's still gonna pay me make a live, you know what I mean? To pay my rent, pay my groceries. I was like, oh, this is like a blast, you know what I mean? So for me, the I was already happy doing this, paying to do that. And then later I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to become like an instructor one day, a black belt who becomes like on my mind, I was like, okay, I can be a teacher later. That was enough, you know what I mean? So like all the other stuff, like was just so much extra. And then obviously was good. Even when I was already on my prime to go compete, like getting like a, um, couple $1,000 price, $10,000 price in a DCC, what is still there, you know what I mean? That was huge, you know what I mean? For someone that was already happy just doing because that makes me happy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I do want to talk a little bit about, your time competing at ADCC, the runs that you had. A lot of people, have their own favorite matches of yours, but I want to ask for you yourself, what are some of the matches from your career that really stand out as either, your favorite matches or kind of a challenge that you overcame? Which matches stand out to you?
Uh, let let me share this. Compete absolute was never easy, right, Maddie? And to win a DCC felt really good, but feel really good after you win the DCC, and you still think about you have to go the absolute. It was not easy, you know what I mean? So that was something that was always like a big challenge for me. And I felt like I couldn't run away from that, you know. And I felt like I always did in the ADCC. I always felt like uh, okay, I have to put my name in the absolute, you know what I mean? They were gonna come ask me like, are you are you give a run the absolute today? I knew they were gonna ask me that, right? So that was like a big part of the ADCC for me. But at the same time, I have to remember uh, my first ADCC when I was able to compete against Shaolin, what was a quick win, but was a really a big one for me because it was a quick match, but it was a big win for me because everybody knew he was he was on his prime. Everybody knew he was probably was the biggest name on that day. And to win that, I felt like that's when everything changed. That was the moment that everybody kind of looked me different. I felt that, you know, I mean, people make me feel that way. It's not that I was alone. People was looking me different, and that's was when I won my first a world title, and I felt like I need to mention that how big was that for me because people look me different. And when I say different, I didn't share that many times because I never have that feeling I never noticed that early. But when I was able to compete against Shaolin that day, and then was a quick win, what I was not expecting to be quick, and then when it happened, that kind of shocked me too because he went to sleep when I was choking, and when the referee told me to stop, I was feeling he's making me stop the choke, and we're gonna have to start again because he's still moving on my mind. He was still spinning. And I was so upset, oh, the ref is making me let go the choke, and then we're gonna have to start again. And then when I finished the match and I noticed that he went to sleep, I was still shocked on that. And then coming out of that match, Maddie, I didn't share that many times because I didn't think about that. But what people makes me feel like everybody look at me right when I come out of the match, like I did something wrong. Do you know when you feel shame of yourself? You did something wrong and people
Yeah.
look at you oh, why you did this mess over here? You know, that's the feeling that I have when people look at me because I was not supposed to win the match. So
Yes.
winning the match, everybody looking at me what they look at people is like, why you won? You know what I mean? No one knows you. You're not supposed to win. Everybody's looking at what's kind of like that. And that's why it was so strange for me. Obviously, I soon later I win the whole tournament and then everybody's celebrated. But then right after the match, I was like, who are you? Why you able to win against Shaolin? Not in a halfway. Everybody was looking like a strange, you know what I mean? That was the feeling, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that must have been super, unexpected and hard for you to figure out why that might be the case. But, you came into that tournament in 2003 as a late replacement. I can imagine everyone had their own expectations on how that match would go. And I think that's why it's a lot of people's favorite match of yours, because it really was a defining moment in your career, looking back on it, where you earned the respect. And especially the way that match went down, putting him to sleep, it was pretty undeniable. So yeah, yeah, what an insane moment in your career. And I'd want to ask you as well, what do you think have been some of the matches that you've learned the most from, either, ADCC or IBJJF? Any matches that you feel like it was a tough challenge, maybe loss, maybe win, but you feel like you made the most development in your game afterwards and learned the most from that match?
That's a lot, right? I feel like I've tried to learn uh something every match I have. But and I have a lot of learn lessons from my competition, and that's why I always felt like the need of go compete. I feel like they need to go compete because I feel like I will learn something, I'll get better from that. But for example, one time I was having like a hard super I was having a hard super fight against Jake Shields, and I was not able to do much in the beginning. And he was kind of like literally stopping every move I have. And then I noticed during that time that was like I was going really hard, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not getting anything. I'm not moving on to a dominant position. I'm still moving hard, trying hard, and I cannot improve the scenario. And I look at him and I saw he breathing hard. And then that was like, okay, he- I'm not the only one that is tired. I feel he's tired too. Okay, if he's tired, okay, we're good. We're both tired, you know what I mean? And I start going even harder because I know we're both tired. So it's not just me. And then like somehow I start wrestling with him because before I thought I couldn't wrestle with him, I heard he has a good stand takedowns. And then I stand up and wrestle with him and I took him down from the guard, you know what I mean? And I end up submit him. And then he said like, oh, you're the first one that submit me. I don't know why he said that. I don't know if it was the first one in the competition. I don't know. The first one in black belt. I don't know. But he said that. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expect to submit him like after that begin because it was a hard begin. But then when I saw that he was breathing hard, I was like, that gave me strength. I was like, okay, he's tired too. Okay, I can keep going. It's not, I'm not the only one that's tired during the match. And then later on, man, he started come train with me in New York many times. And he was always like a hard train. And the funny thing, like, doesn't matter when, he's always breathe hard. He always like when he goes, he always breathing hard. You know? So that makes me feel like, oh, he was not tired. He just like he just bring a lot of air when he's going. You can see he's like a so it was not that he was tired. He was just like a he breathing hard. So that makes me learn like that. Like you need to find something that makes you feel strong during the match. You know what I mean? And on the other way, you cannot show any weakness to your opponent. And I felt like when he was breathing hard, I saw him with the mouth open. That makes me feel like okay, he's tired. You know what I mean? So let me go harder now. I was tired too. Was a tough start, but then I felt like okay, since he's tired, okay, I'm gonna go harder because I can see he's tired. So that makes me feel like that makes me learn that I need to find something that makes me feel strong. And on the other way, you cannot show any weakness for your opponent because maybe he will gonna use that as a fuel, you know what I mean? Because that's what happened to me during that match, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a funny story, realizing that, later on training with him. But it reminds me of something that Kendall Rusing talks about sometimes about this whole idea of being tired in matches and how to find something to get your mentality to do exactly what you're saying, to kind of flip and give you an edge. And it's basically, she says, your tired just has to beat their tired. Like you're both going to be tired, you're both competing, but your tired has to beat their tired, which I really love. That helps me a lot as well.
I always feel this during the match. I feel like you need to find something that is gonna give you like an edge on you. And when I say something, not like a technique, you just need to feel something that is gonna make your mind feel stronger and not weaker. If you find something that is gonna make you weaker, when I say something like oh, that guy looks pretty like scared, you know what I mean? You look at him, it's like oh, look his grip, you know what I mean? His hands like looks pretty big. He must have like a strong grip. You cannot look for those stuff, you know what I mean? You need to look, I feel like I look for the opposite, you know what I mean? I feel like oh, he's really tall. I feel like I can get under him easy. I feel like he has the long legs. I feel like I'm gonna have to get I'm gonna have a better grip to take him down. You know what I mean? I feel like you need to look the other way. And not in the bad way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, so much of it is a mental game, understanding what you need to give you that extra push. And so I want to kind of shift gears here and talk about some of the techniques that you've developed and refined in Jiu-Jitsu, because so many of the techniques that you're known for in your time are now kind of fundamental pillars of modern no-gi. So I want to kind of go through a couple of them that I've chosen. There's a big list of techniques that you've contributed to, but I want to go through a couple of them and hear your process of developing it and kind of like what problems you developed them to solve as well. So I want to start off with something that, you hear Marcelo, you hear Marcelo and you think of the arm drag. You were kind of one of the first people to use it the way you did on the big stage in such a creative way, combining it, like chaining it with different techniques as well. So how did you first kind of see the value of the arm drag and start developing your arm drag game?
Lot of those techniques I have like a clear like a path how that went developed. Some of them is kind of a little bit blurry, and I like to be honest and share everything, like give a credit for everyone, that influence on those techniques, like my coaches, right? Um, I used to cross the arm. I used to cross the arm grip with the gi and then reach for the belt, because I saw my my coach before he was my coach. I saw him in the TV showing that he just demonstrated a little bit of jiu-jitsu, no fight at all. He was just like demonstrated a little bit of jiu-jitsu against Leo Vieira, who later becomes like a friend of mine. Later we compete against each other. So they both were showing that technique in a rolling session in a TV, open TV in Brazil. That was huge for me watching that like in the TV. I was like, oh, they put in some jiu-jitsu in the TV. And then I started, and then he did that cross arm with the belt grip, and he sit down with like a throwing over the head. And I was like, I think I can do that in the guard. I felt like, oh, that was a good technique. I think I can do that on the guard. And then later, all the way to like a brown black belt, that became one of my favorite sweeps. I start to sweep like from butterfly guard with the grip on the belt to the same side of the same hook. I sweep the person the same hook. And as a brown belt, I start to train no gi, and I was like, I don't have the belt, I don't have the sleeves. How can I do like the cross arm? And then the coach of my coach, he came to do a seminar in a town like a Castelo Branco. He was the coach of my coach, somebody that was not that close, but he was my coach respect him so much, put him in such a high pedestal that for me it was like when he came, he showed the arm drag. He was not wrestling, but he just showed the arm drag technique in the seminar that he came. I was not even doing no gi. I don't remember if he showed the arm drag in a no gi seminar or if it was the gi. He just showed the arm drag. And then later on, when I started doing no gi, I was like, oh, arm drag looks like the cross arm that I did. I was like, let me try the arm drag from the guard. And I started doing the arm drag from the guard. And I feel like that's how I start to practice more the arm drag from the feet, right? I started doing the arm drag from the feet, and then I continue to do the arm drag from the guard. It was always like from the butterfly guard, from sit up position. So that's how everything kind of like connects to me, you know what I mean?
Wow, okay, that's super interesting. And what was the process like of figuring out what techniques to chain into the arm drag? Because there's arm drag into the back take from butterfly, which is one that you're known for, but also sometimes it turns into a wrestle up. You have lots of different paths that the arm drags can take you down. What was the process like of exploring all of those paths?
I was surprised like how damn drag brings you close to your opponent's back. I was already like I think a good back taking since I was like blue belt. I feel like I always like a chasing the back, but I didn't realize like the submission from the back is a lot easier and much less like defend from our opponents than the other ones. I always feel like, oh, if I try the arm bar from the close guard, I feel a big guy, they can just kind of like smash me, stack me. And then many times I was getting people's back, I was like, oh, now they cannot reach me. Now they cannot like see what I'm doing. And then that starts to connect really well to the arm drag. And then obviously I start putting even more time to hold someone's back. I start to try to develop like a easier way to me trap my opponent's arm from the back and then get the submission easy. And then I realized like even big guys, they cannot really kind of like muscle out of that position and take me out of their back, you know. And so like that was like something that just the daily, it started to become more obviously that was a strong technique, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. I also want to hear about your development of the X guard. It's something you're well known for, refining and developing the technique as a whole. How did you first start using the X guard, and how did you kind of fit it into your game and develop the sequences that you can use, the techniques with the X guard?
I was a big like a deep half guard player. And there's a technique that they call in Brazil like a throw in the garbage. You know what I mean? Like you're in a deep half guard and then you come up with the leg on your shoulder and you just throw the person over. It's just like when you're gonna throw like a big barrel of garbage, you know what I mean, on the dumpster. So that's kind of where that comes from in Brazil. And then from that deep half guard coming up with the leg over the shoulder, I start to feel like a or maybe I can try the butterfly guard and I put one hook from there with the butterfly guard. But then I felt like my opponent still can move forward and then I put the other hook, getting the X, you know what I mean? And then I felt like my opponent now he cannot kick and now he cannot step forward. I felt like that was a big part of that coming from like a deep half guard player. Try coming up and then start losing the position and then just start to hold that. I felt like that was like how everything kind of come together. And then it's the type of technique that I was able to do with gi and no gi. That's a big like understand of me. I need to choose a move that I can do for both, gi and no gi.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And so when you see people doing X guard, when you see people playing X guard, what are some common mistakes that you see, and just kind of some suggestions that you would make for people to improve their X guard game?
Obviously, the defense of the X guy is a lot more developed today. When I was doing X guy, people has no idea what to do. They just fall on their butt. And I feel like today the defense got a lot better. And I see people still trying the X guard today, but then the other people has much better defense now. And then I notice sometimes their hooks is just not so high. They don't have like a very deep like a hooks like close to the hip. And I feel like I still have a good X guard game, but I feel my opponent has a much better defense than before. But then I still feel like I can fix that, just keep my hooks much higher because I'm expecting them to be able to weave their feet out of my X guard, you know what I mean? I feel like that will help a lot, you know what I mean? Not do the same relaxed X guard like before, just keep your hooks a little bit more like a tense and higher on the other person's leg.
Interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to try that. I've been trying to develop my X guard game as well, so it's great to hear from yourself some tips that I can use. Another one that, when my coach Teco came to train with you, he came back and he was north-south choking all of us, and he taught it to me, and I've learned it a couple times, and it's one that I think is kind of notorious for being a really difficult strangle to figure out the right kind of angle, figure out the right pressure. How did it become one of your signature moves?
Look, do you know how strong is like a real neck choke? Like I feel like now that I'm teaching kids, now that I have my own kids, like if you let them put in a real neck choke, like I don't think you can get out. I mean, you're probably still gonna have to tap, even if a little kid put in a real neck choke. That's how strong is the technique. And I feel north-south choke is very close to that. It's a really high percentage, like a submission. I feel like that's why I took so much time to refine those techniques. And you're right, like take some time to understand how you do the squeeze. Like people, when they do rear neck choke, they think they squeeze with their arm. They think they're kind of like a squeeze, but the move is so strong because I'm using my whole body. When I say my whole body, like not my legs, but I feel like I'm using my shoulder. I'm using my neck to keep everything kind of like tight and compress. I use the back, what I mean, like to keep everything like a squeeze. So the squeeze is not just my arm, they squeeze. The squeeze comes all around. And then north south choke start to give me that. I feel like I can concentrate the squeeze from my whole like upper body and don't waste any like energy. The squeeze is just like on my opponent's neck. I'm not squeezing his head. I'm not squeezing his face. I'm not squeezing his shoulder. I don't. It's not like an arm in guillotine that you have to squeeze through the person's arm. So I feel like it's such a high percentage like a submission. But one more time, I was in like Abu Dhabi, but this time was the trials, and I was watching the trials. I was really like I went there. I was like, oh, I'm Abu Dhabi world champion, so I was there not thinking about like, oh, I don't have to do trials again. I was just super relaxed watching that tournament, and I saw my friend Demian Maia doing the north-south choke in someone and he was doing with the arm in. He put his opponent in the north south choke with the arm in. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I think he's trying to make him tap. I didn't know what was the move. I was like, oh, I think he has a submission on him, on the other guy. Oh, I think he's really trying to make the guy tap from that position. I never saw that. And then the guy escaped. The guy didn't tap. But then I went home next day to train, and I have that on my mind. I was like, I never knew the technique, and I think there's a choke there, but I don't think I can do with the arm in. Let me try to do without the arm in. And that's when everything kind of like started. You know what I mean? I just tried without the arm in. After I saw Demian doing the same north-south choke with the arm in, I tried to do without the arm in. And obviously I started working really well because I was already like I already have a lot more experience in no-gi, so it was easy to feel that like, oh, this is a good move. I can put a lot of time that it's gonna work out. You know what I mean? That's kind of how the north-south choke start. You know?
Wow. Okay. So, why do you think that it's something that so many people struggle with? And what do you think are some of the common mistakes that you see when people try the north-south choke?
Maddie, it's definitely like it's not the common rear neck choke that you just reach the person's neck and just squeeze. And many times you're not so technical, but then the other person still tap, right? The north-south
Hmm.
choke is like is very like a unorthodox finish because you don't see the person's head. The person's head is kind of like behind you, and then you have to squeeze looking through his chest. You don't have like you don't see his head. You don't see that his face is getting red or not, you know. So people has hard time already with that. And with the technique, I feel like less is better on the north-south choke. You don't have to crank or squeeze so hard to get the north-south choke. I feel like it's a very gentle choke. Like you start squeezing, you put a very little effort, and the person already start feeling the choke. And I feel it's very easy to somebody just kind of like go really hard and then lose the position. And the good thing is like is a choke that you can do even with the gi. So if you have such a like a high percentage choke submission that you can do gi and no gi like uh is a I strong recommend. But then people has a hard time because like it's very like a refined technique. If you do too much, like can go wrong. Different than the rear neck choke that you can just squeeze hard and the person is still gonna tap. The north south choke is still like a hard to people understand. But once you understand, believe you can do with the gi, and you're gonna surprise a lot of people who not expecting to have to defend the north south with the gi. You know what I mean? And the other problem is some people they try to learn that with the gi. I feel like it's the type of technique that you can do with the gi, but it's much harder to learn them with the gi. And the gi always be in the way to feel like the fabric on your armpit, you know what I mean? Like doesn't feel like that clean. So I feel like so much easier to learn the north-south choke in the no gi, and then later you transfer that for the gi. And I have some really good students who developed that and got really good on that. And that's why I feel like everyone can do as long as they just put the time onto, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good suggestion, learning it in Nogi, because I think it's probably one of the ones where, as you're saying, you can't see your opponent's face. You kind of have to feel it. So, because you can feel it better in Nogi, I think that's a great suggestion to practice it first, learn it first in Nogi, and then adapt it as well. So considering you kind of developed and refined all these different techniques, you've made such a mark on the Nogi world. Um, where do you think the next kind of couple decades, the future of jiu-jitsu in terms of just like the modern nogi scene. We've seen it develop so much. What do you think are some of the next developments of techniques in nogi that you think we're gonna start to see?
Oh, that's kind of like hard to predict, Mary. Because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm hoping for to learn, and I feel like I still have some time. Especially because I was off of training so hard and competing I'm not in the high pace to develop something new. I don't have anything that new, on my mind. And when I say that new, something that nobody ever saw anything similar to that, But that's what I want too, and I feel like that's what everyone wants to figure out something new. When I say everyone, everyone should be looking for that, but it's exciting. It's exciting to see what will coming up, and I hope different than before. Like I could be even faster develop. Maybe you don't need to wait 10 more years to see something new. You know what I mean? Could be that early. You know what I mean? But it's something that I'm still looking for, and if I figure out, I believe everybody will see. If I figure out, I'm gonna show to everybody. I always felt like a big sharing of my technique. But at the same time, I always express out them when I go compete. So if I figure that out, I promise you everyone is gonna be the first one to see them.
Awesome. I love that. One thing about kind of the development of techniques is I think a lot of the time it can come from rule set changes. In submission only jiu-jitsu rule sets, you see kind of a different type of jiu-jitsu than you see in points-based rule sets. So, kind of alongside that line of thinking about technique development, what do you think about the different kind of rule sets we've been seeing these days, and what rule set do you think brings out the best jiu-jitsu?
Oh, another big question, Mary. And then maybe I don't have the answer for that too. And it's just because my personality, Mary. Um, would be would be fun if I can tell you that I don't know the rules in the ADCC. You know, what I mean, if you ask me for all the points scored in the ADCC, I don't know. I know it sounds stupid, but I don't think I know. If I guess, I'm probably gonna guess like a half wrong. What is point and what is not? How much is the points in the DCC? And the reason why is because I never care about the rules that much. I just felt like I have one way, and my way is just try hard to defeat my opponent. I don't want to try hard to make the referee decide my match. I don't want to try hard to convince. I don't want to try hard to convince the referee. You know what I mean? I want to be able to make my opponent like a give up. He
Hmm.
has to give in, during the match. And and I have a good understand of not doing anything wrong that will jeopardize my match. I was it's not that I don't know the technique, or if I pass the guard, I'll let go. No, I know that part of the technique. You know what I mean? And what I'm trying to say, I just need to know enough to don't make those mistakes. I was uh, I know I have the position. I know how long exact I need to hold my opponent. I know those stuff. But about points, I never really took the time. And I've been doing jiu-jitsu with the gi for so long. And when I see how technical the details of the rules became, that lost me. I was like, I can't follow that. I don't use that, so since I don't use that, I can't keep all those details in my mind when it's pointing, when it's not pointing. I just know there's another person on the other side that I need to make him give in. I need to literally go as hard as I can that he was gonna feel he's gonna tap or he's gonna just literally let me do whatever I want to him. He's gonna let me pass, he's gonna let me mount, he's gonna not try to escape. Sometimes people give in when you see they don't try to escape. You, I got to some matches that I literally I'm winning by so many points. I want to make my opponent tap, and I already feel oh, he just don't want to tap. He just don't want to tap. So that's what or you make your opponent give in. He just don't want to tap. You know what I mean? And and I I believe strong on that, Manny. I don't know how many people can believe on that, that I'm trying to say the truth, but like I never thought about the rules that much. For example, maybe can be like a good example to people realize what I'm saying. I was living in New York City already for a good amount of time, 5, 6 years, and then they asked me if I can do a super fight in a special event in Rio de Janeiro against Romulo Barral. And I was like, yeah, we never compete. It would be a good match. You know what I mean? Like, we figure out the weight. And then they told me like, it's going to be 10 minutes, was with the gi. So just like a black belt, 10 minutes. That makes sense. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, that's good. You know what I mean? 10 minutes match. Someone that I never compete, who I know is really good. So it'll be a good match. Man, I arrived that day. I arrived the day before to make the weight, to check of the weighting. Um, and in the car, after the promoter picked me up from the airport, he said like, "Oh, we thought about do 15 minutes. Are you okay with that?" I was like, I was thinking about 10 minutes, but I don't train only 10 minutes. I train like more than 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't mind. No complaint. I didn't complain at all. I was not with my coach. My coach, usually if you have a coach, your coach usually who complains about this stuff. For you, I was like, I was by myself in the car. I was like, yeah, I felt almost like a challenge. Like, I can do 50 minutes. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say no. Imagine if you go and tell that for my opponent. I don't want to give him that like I said, that strength of like, oh, he doesn't want to do 10 minutes. He doesn't want to do 50 minutes. He just want to do 10 minutes. I immediately accept as almost as a challenge, because I trained more than 10 minutes. I was like, I can do 15 minutes. And why when I say yes, he look at me as like but I want to do the first 10 minutes, no, uh, I want to do the first 10 minutes points and the last 5 minutes no point. And then that took some time to me like what does that mean? Like first 10 minutes point and then the last 5 minutes no points. On my mind, I was like, oh, that's kind of like a confused. But I was already there. I was like, okay. I just said like, okay, I don't understand what does that mean. I
Mhm.
would know that like I was able to take my opponent down during the first 10 minutes. I couldn't pass his guard. He has a really tough guard, very strong grip. And then the time ran out. I don't know if we start again. I think we start again. Yes, the match start again. We stand up, the match start again, no points. Since there was no submission, now there's like 5 minutes, no point. And I put guard on him and I was like, okay, I don't want to sweep him because I couldn't pass his guard before. I need to try finishing from the board. I need to try do something. And then I realized my point, like, oh, now it's only submission. There's no more point. And then he cannot pass my guard because if he pass my guard, there's nothing. You know what I mean? So if I pass his guard, there's nothing. So it's like and then the last 5 minutes was only him try submission. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say, like, that's how I see about rules. I just like, I believe like there's only one rule. And if you want to make excited, and if you want to make excited and is strong like a decision to you to win, you have to try everything. When I say try everything, you have to give everything. You cannot think about the rules. You know what I mean? I know maybe I got a little bit lost about that, but like uh why and what kind of rules that brings the best. But like I feel like if you want to, you make any rules exciting. I mean, if you just kind of try hard, and that's how I feel. I still feel that way, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I can't say that I'm particularly surprised. I mean, with the submission rate that you have, it's clearly there's one thing on your mind, and it's finishing the match and not having to, not having to know the intricacies of the rules so you can, ride out a win by points. That's never been your mindset. So I can't say I'm particularly surprised about that. But another development that we've been having in the modern jiu-jitsu scene aside from rule sets, is also development of, the mat space. We've been seeing angled walls at CJI with the pit, the alley, and then at UFC BJJ, they've got the bowl. What do you think about the angled wall jiu-jitsu? And is that something that you'd be interested in trying?
This is very exciting, I believe. It's something that, Mary, imagine what I just said about the rules. And let me just add one extra thing. I do like points, I do appreciate the points because I feel the points means like you get a dominated position. When you
Mm-hmm.
pass someone's guard, you're close to someone's neck. When you pass someone's guard, like there's no more guard. Now it's like you're much closer to attack his arms. There's no more legs on your way. And I feel when you make the points, you make the person lose. And then when he think he's lose, now he's trying harder. And then when he try
Right.
harder, he open up too. And that's what I want. I want to we both open up. I don't want my opponent try to like just just to stall. I want him to try finish me because when he try finish me, I believe he's gonna get the best of me. You know what I mean? So I don't want an opponent that will try just hold on. So that's why I like the points. I like to make the points to make my opponent feel like, okay, now I'm losing. Now I'm gonna try harder. And then when they try harder, I feel like that helps me. Okay. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I almost lost your question. Okay.
It's about
Um,
the angled walls in
yes.
jiu-jitsu.
And then thinking about that, Mary, um, like I said, I know just enough about the rules. And one thing that I know really well, like I understand to never make points outside the match. You're never gonna see me driving, try to take somebody down outside the match because I don't want to bet. I don't want to give a interpretation to the referee. I don't want him has to interpret it like, oh, he did all this, and the referee look at me is like, oh, that was just a advantage. You know what I mean? Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
did all this, you end up on the person's back outside, and then the referee like, okay, let's go back on your feet. I was like, yeah, but I did all this work. So I always that thing that we just talked in the beginning is to be able to breathe and not get so nervous. That helped me so much today because when I'm in the mat, I know exactly where I am. You're never gonna see me try sweep somebody outside. I know the mat is like I'll turn my way around if I want to sweep somebody to make sure he's inside the mat. And then when I see the tournaments today with the pitch, with the curve wall, uh, I am like a higher from one championship, and I have competed in a cage. And now against Lachlan Giles, like it's gonna be in a ring. All that is just it's just good for me because I don't have to chase my opponent. I know he just cannot get away. Do you understand? I feel like and I have chased a lot of people inside the area that I know if I go, he's gonna just get out and I cannot go. So to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have a ring, to be able to have like a cage, to be able to have like a pitch, something that is gonna don't let my opponent just kind of like a got out of bound. Look, that really makes me happy, and I never train in those curve wall in the pitch. I never train on that, but it's exciting. I think like maybe new techniques will come out from that.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's super exciting. And I think, the thing that people want to see when they watch Jiu-Jitsu, when they want to see exciting matches is, nonstop action. And with the out of bounds, just a mat on the ground, there's a boundary, there's out of bounds, there's a lot of resets, a lot of stops in the action, a lot of time for people to, stop a scramble, think about it, and then start back calmly. But, what we see with the cage, with the pit, it's just nonstop action. And a whole new, like you're saying, a new opportunity for techniques to be developed as well. So I think it's super, super exciting for the development of jiu-jitsu.
And Mary, you talk about the rules and I said I don't know that much about the rules, but I have a good understanding about my place in a match. When I say in a patch in a mat area. If I want, Mary, uh, I don't want to sound like overconfident, but I don't think no one can also corner me against the wall. If I don't want to be with my back against the wall, I don't think no one can put me there. You understand? Like
Hmm.
I can find my way to like a to defend myself and don't let me like what I'm trying to say like if I don't know how to work the pitch, for example. I never train a pitch, but I, I don't think it's gonna be that easy to push me back. You know what I mean? I'm a lot more comfortable to push and step forward than walk backwards and let people corner me. You understand? So that's something that like I thought I don't understand about the rules, but like if I don't want to be going this way, I'm not gonna go that way. You know what I mean? If I know that's not a good idea, like, oh, I don't know what to do with my back against the wall, like, I'm not gonna let nobody push me. You know what I mean? I'm, I have a strong confidence that like I can push the mat forward that I wouldn't get like a corner, for example, in a ring. Do you understand? Like, and that's something that like I take a big pride of that. That like I don't understand about the rules. What I feel like almost stupid because I cannot follow all those little details that people is developed today. But I have a very good manager of like where I want to fight, and I want to fight like inside the match because I'm afraid to go out of bound and then doesn't count the points or I never want to look like I'm running from my opponent. I feel like that'll be like something that I don't that can make me feel maybe I'm gonna be booing in a match. Like that's like a big fear of mine, be booing in a match. You know what I mean? Like so those are the things that like I take pride that I understand like I will never gonna try and make a mistake of sweep somebody outside the ring and then complain say like oh that was a point, you know what I mean? Referee, that was a point, you know what I mean? I feel embarrassed about those stuff, you know what I mean? Like argue with the referee, I feel like embarrassed, you know.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's such an important, skill to have to keep yourself, kind of a map of your surroundings, where you are in relation to the boundaries. And I think that's going to make this, all the more exciting with the ring. You having that skill set and also because you're so aware of it, you can use it for your advantage as well. So it's a whole other tactical area of jiu-jitsu that's being introduced, which I think is super, super fun and exciting.
We train with that, Mary. Like for example, uh, not many people may be used to training a big class. I'm very lucky in New York, starting now in Hawaii. That I'm here full time. We've been having like a crowd class, and look, you need to learn to roll around a lot of people, you know what I mean? And you cannot be kicking people around, you know what I mean? Like I'm constantly like I'm moving myself doing roll. I'm moving my opponent's head. I don't want him to get kicked, so I move his head out of the way. And I feel that's a good understanding, like why you still going live, you're going hard, and then you understand that like that skills, you know what I mean? And just one quick story, like maybe you like to hear. My first Mundial that I won in 2004, it was like a long time ago, but like it's clear because that was my first like first place in the Mundial as a black belt in 2004. In the final, I took my opponent's back, and then when I say took his back, like I literally, I have like my hand on the collar, like and I already have like a good back finish. So I knew that was like a very good chance to me finish that position. And my opponent literally rolled outside. I took his back inside the mat and he rolled outside while I was feeding the collar, while I was like, because for me, take the back. I don't want to just make the hook. If I see my opponent worry about the hook, I want to try like take the time to go to the finish because I feel like it's a short time that your opponent is worried about the hook that you can get the submission. I don't need the hooks if I have the submission, right? Black belt final, Mary, a very like a very experienced opponent who I'm saying he was older than me. That's why like I'm saying that. And that was my first win in the Mundial as a black belt. He rolled outside. The referee only give like 2 points, something. My coach outside went crazy. My coach, like, I can hear he yelling on my favors, like, referee, what are you doing? And then he look at us, he stand up us, and then start again. And I was like, okay, I don't have his back on my mind. I almost have the finish, but I cannot be attached for that, right? I cannot be like
Hmm.
upset for that. So I'm literally, I start going against my opponent immediately. Like, as soon as the referee told us to go, I start going against my opponent. I don't remember what happened. I still won the match. I don't remember what I did after, but it was close because it was just 2 points, right? So anytime he could take me down, we start up again on your feet, he can take me down. I think they just count as a sweep because I went to his back and he rolled down and then we went outside. But I took his back way before. And in the end of the final, I become a Mundial World Champion with the gi right in the ending. The referee raised my arm. He looked at me as like a, oh, Marcelo, thank you for don't be upset at me. You know what I mean? I was like, no, I'm fine. I already won. You know what I mean? But because he knew it was a mistake, he knew it was a
Mm,
problem. He knew that could be argued. I'm not saying he was wrong, but he knew that could be like I could be just kind of like a yelling, make it really hard for him. And I felt I was gonna make harder for myself too if I just be complain about something that I already lost. I already lost the position. The referee is already kind of like a he's not gonna put us. I don't want to be attached for something in the back because that would make me feel like a uh oh, but I could win. I could have finished. You know what I mean? No, I still can. I'm still here. I'm not hurt. I'm still like 100% in the match. So I feel like that's how I want to feel. You know what I mean? And even the ref, like he was happy, like, oh, thank you to don't complain. I was like, no, no, don't worry, I'm fine. You know what I mean? But my coach got really upset at him.
wow. Yeah, yeah. I mean, with the new developments, there's no more of that like rolling out of bounds intentionally, and also kind of the mentality that you're talking about. You already did it once, so you can do it again. It's in the past. You have to move on and, focus on what's in front of you. So I really love that mentality. And I'm super sorry, we're going a little bit over, but if you wouldn't mind, I just have one more question to ask you, if
That's
that's
okay.
okay. Okay, perfect. So it's one that we ask everyone, and it's kind of like a foundation, a pillar of what we do at Fighters Advice. And it basically, I want to ask you, for those that want to follow in your footsteps and pursue a career in jiu-jitsu and grappling, and if they asked you for one piece of advice, what kind of advice would you give them?
Man, I think like I think if you people really want, you know what I mean, they can they can use a lot of stuff that I said that's what I feel like that was different me and my opponents, you know what I mean? I feel like if they can follow a lot of the stuff that I just said, like when people I heard so many times, what is the secret? What is the secret? What do you do different? I was like, this is what I always did different. That's how I always thought a little bit different than my opponent, and I felt like that's what makes the difference. But I don't want to just give people advice just about jiu-jitsu because I feel like I did something bigger than that. And Maddie, I did really choose something that makes me happy. I did really choose something that I love to do. And when I say love to do, like even I want you people to know that even if I lose in jiu-jitsu, even if I have lost all my tournaments, I was always enjoy so much to do jiu-jitsu. So basic, what I would like to advise to people, like if you love something, when I say love, like you should know what makes your heart like like big, you know what I mean? You should know that. And if you love that so much, like just do it. You know what I mean? Like just don't hesitate it. Just give everything when you love something. When I say you love something, like you love something that you like to do that makes you happy and doesn't hurt other people, you know what I mean? Like just do it, you know what I mean? Like, and that's my advice. If you do really love jiu-jitsu, just give everything, you know what I mean? Don't don't hesitate it. Don't like don't control. Just give it. Just give everything you have. You know, don't worry. You know what I mean? I feel like everything will work out. You know what I mean? And I that's the advice that I want to give for my kids. I mean, like whatever you choose, just like to do in life, just give everything. You know what I mean? If that really makes you happy. You know what I mean?
That's such an inspiring message, especially coming from someone like you who, chose something because you love it and there wasn't really a path for you, but you created the path and it worked for you. And you, as you mentioned, you would have been okay with it just to scrape by as long as you were doing jiu-jitsu. So I think that's such an important message and I really, really appreciate your advice. Thank you so much, Marcelo, for taking the time. This was super great. I can't wait for our viewers to see this. I know they're going to be super excited. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time.
That really makes me happy too. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you so much, Marcelo.